Alvin Tedjo is a parent of 3 young children and a board member with the Ontario Coalition for Better Childcare. Quickly, broad scale, what's your childcare situation right now?
So we had 2 kids in childcare for the last number of years, and over the 6 years, obviously, more time and money spent at childcare. But last year we spent nearly $30,000 in childcare out of pocket, and that's more than what we spent on our mortgage.
So no doubt. I mean, it's such a heavy load. How do you do it? What do you do to try to make those bills?
You end up deferring. You make choices, right? Instead of putting as much money as you want to in their RESPs or into your own retirement savings, you have to defer that. You have to decide whether or not we want to work as much and when one of us gets to go back to work.
I mean, it's funny that, and I'm in a very similar situation. I have 3 kids, 6, 3, and 3. So I've got 3 kids in childcare as well, or after-school care for the eldest kid. But still, it's a big bill to carry. It's a lot to try to juggle. And I would never have guessed when I was, before we had kids, the extent to which this one single decision can come to define where you live, who's working, so much else in your life. And you've experienced that.
Yeah, absolutely. We had to move further west because we couldn't find any spots in Ontario, in Toronto. And in actual fact, we were on the waiting list for so long after our first child that they called us to tell us that a spot was available when we had our second child. And I mean, one of the things is that there's also waiting fees for waiting lists, right, although Ontario just got rid of that. And so we'd like to see that across the country as well.
And I mean, every time I have this conversation with people, they say, well, there's cheaper options. There's, some lady down the street who has a bunch of kids in her basement. Why did you decide against that? Yeah,
so we actually did have a little experience with a home care system, but home care is unlicensed, and anytime you hear of an accident or a tragedy happening, it tends to be amongst those spaces. And so what we want is more spaces that are publicly assisted, publicly funded, that are of higher quality, where we have ECEs training our children, where we have a set program and an organized structure, and some of these are even at schools.
We heard David talking about the disparity between provinces that have fixed fees and subsidized spots versus open free market, which is what you and I are struggling with. If you could make one policy recommendation for anybody, whether it's municipal, provincial, or federal level, what would it be?
So I think the dream is universal childcare, and there was a national childcare plan over 10 years ago that died when governments changed, but it needs to be part of the conversation again. Enough people aren't talking about childcare as an affordability issue, childcare as an equity issue for women who tend to stay home, and what we need is a universal childcare dialogue that everybody can contribute to and say that this is a priority.
I guess the problem, though, is for people like me and you, 5-6 years from now, we'll be in a position where our kids aren't in daycare anymore. We've got other costs that we're worried about, and we let it slip, and there's like sort of the people behind us have to pick up the ball and run with it. Is continuity and sort of keeping that argument on the table and in place no matter where we are in that childcare picture important?
For sure, and in the same way that we don't all use the healthcare system equally, the same way we don't use the education system equally, we know that there's a benefit to society, and that's the benefit that we need to talk about.